Hello and welcome to Property Question Time. I'm Stephen Galpin and this is a show where you can have your property related questions answered by our team of experts. Now, we're going to do something a little bit different today. I've got with me two people who have brought innovation to the property market, one in terms of rentals and the other in terms of sales. So first of all, Anthony Kyriacou, CEO and founder of crispyhouse.com, rental and sales portal. Right, welcome to you. And joining Anthony is Chris Buckler, founder of The Estate Agency. Welcome to you. Now, I think what I'd better do is give you both, and perhaps starting with you, Anthony, if you just have a minute, explain the innovation that you've created that you're bringing to the rental market.
Yeah, sure. So we're a property rental platform. Our kind of main USP in comparison to our competitors is essentially the speed of the user journey that we offer. It's pretty native in terms of our kind of target audience, the millennial 20 to 40-year-olds who are used to kind of this WhatsApp style functionality. So that's essentially what we offer in our platform. It's the speed of communication from when a user, being a prospective tenant, sees an advert online on our platform and they make an inquiry. It's an instant communication channel which they initiate at that point with the advertiser, and 80 to 90% of the time that will be with a letting agent, and they will start the journey from that point. We've seen that within the market, generally WhatsApp is used quite heavily as a medium of communication. So we've introduced that technology from the very first point of the inquiry.
Okay, very good. And why wouldn't you if you're looking for a rental property? The days of trekking around the agents are gone, aren't they, really?
Absolutely.
Everything at your fingertips, and in today's world of trying to get a rental property, I actually think that's most useful. Thank you for that, Anthony. Chris?
In the UK, the public tend to hate estate agencies and estate agents, which is pretty unfortunate. And we set the estate agency up to try and fix that relationship between vendors, buyers, landlords, and the agent. So what we do actually isn't that new in the UK. So the estate agency is essentially a brokerage in which self-employed agents can plug into. They get training, tech, branding, portals, support, everything they need to run their own independent estate agency business, but as partners of the estate agency. Now, for the end user, that means you don't have an agent, and I've been guilty of this previously in my career, that has KPIs of getting, valuations on the board, sales on the board. You get an agent that genuinely has that fiduciary relationship with you where they put your needs above theirs, they advise you accordingly, and they get paid the majority of commission on the back end. So they generally have a driver to do right for the client. Currently in the UK, the majority of high street businesses, as we call them, the person that values the property isn't the person that then goes on to sell it. The person that sells it may only get 2, 5, 10, in some cases 15% of the commission. So if they get you, an extra 5 grand, an extra 10 grand, it means a £4.50 difference for them. For the self-employed broker, going to war for the client, actually, 1, it's fun, 2, they take the majority of the fee, and 3, I think they really play all out because it's their reputation. It's not the reputation of a brand they're promoting. So what we're doing isn't that new, but again, it's very new in the UK. I've been running self-employed models for 8 years now, some American models, some European, and for me, it's the right time to create a homegrown model and take the best bits from kind of international real estate. So the agents offer much more value and the public actually have a pleasurable moving experience.
And I suppose, to simplify that, I suppose you act as an umbrella, do you, to these people, and you're ensuring standards of service and ensuring everybody actually gets paid well to do a good job.
Exactly that. So systems, processes and models, that's what we take away. So what you tend to find, not on the whole, but salespeople are brilliant at doing the deal, but they might not be that good at the due diligence side
or the follow through,
or the compliance side, or whatever it might be. So we offer, for example, in-house sales progression, and we've taken someone from JLL that was a director there that runs that all for us. So it's very, very serious in the way we do things, but we offer that personal touch, and I think that's the key piece that's missing. So salespeople get to go, right, I know I can speak to clients, take on properties and sell them and offer a great service. but the back end systems and models and processes, they don't necessarily enjoy, or it's not their bag. So we take that off them so that they can be the best agent to the client.
Okay. Well, I often sit here and I hear some agents effectively trying to solve problems that aren't really there. But I think what you're both doing is actually bringing add-ons to the market, finessing the market, if you like. And I quite like that, because they both have a use and a place, and that's very positive, very good. But we better get on with the questioning. So, Anthony, with some landlords insisting on a year's rent up front, deposits and rents are approaching practical maximums. Do the panel think that buying will soon be the cheaper option for young people?
I think on paper you could argue that would be the case, but I think in reality, sadly not just yet. I think buying a property for young people especially is an achievement which is still quite distant. I think that the biggest challenge at present, I think Chris could probably have some input on this, but is saving up for a deposit essentially. I think on average, I listened to an interesting statistic that I think most people have to save up between 10 to 12 years just to be able to save enough money for that initial deposit. And then I think one of the issues you have during that period is that prices kind of, increase. So then it kind of makes it slightly more of a distant aspiration. But I think it would be positive if it was realistic. But I think at this moment in time, no, I think rentals are still the best or most achievable avenue.
Yeah. Just on sort of social side of things, I see the government are actually trying to outlaw agents or landlords insisting on a 12-month rental fee up front. However, that's very restrictive on somebody who maybe doesn't have the perfect credit reference, or perhaps isn't earning enough to hit the insurance criteria for rentals. Although the government are sort of saying, well, actually, we're going to make it, outlaw the opportunity to insist on that as a condition of getting a tenancy. But actually, if the tenant wants to say, here's 12 months rent, that'll be fine. I'm getting very confused with all this new legislation, and I don't know how you guys keep up with it really, or how you advise your clients accordingly.
I think it's quite a rare scenario that, although in the summer months it does happen, because you've got the student market and students aren't in full-time employment, you can't kind of meet the thresholds for affordability, and perhaps some of them are from overseas and they don't have a UK guarantor. So I think the go-to measure at that point is kind of quite generally 6 months rent in advance, and there are some kind of more affluent tenants who can afford to pay up front. But it's not a scenario which, I mean, from my experience, really kind of takes place that often, although, it does exist.
Okay. All right. Chris, your question. We have seen the creation of portals, the self-employed agent business model, and purely online services. So all this is a fairly new phenomenon. What's coming next in the world of agency?
Great question. If I had a crystal ball, then I'd be a very rich man.
That's what you're here for.
That's what I'm here for. My prediction is, and it's quite a brave prediction, is that by 2030, 50% of sales transactions will be conducted by self-employed brokers, which is quite crazy because at the moment it's 1.6%, which doesn't seem that much, but actually that's more than Connells, and that's dramatically changed in the last 5 years. Everyone I speak to seems to be setting up a self-employed brokerage or knows someone that wants to go and join one. I think, as I said in my kind of opening speech, the UK sales market is broken, and when you've got people choosing to use what in the States they call for sale by owner or FSBOs, you're kind of online where they pay a couple of £100 up front or they sell for free, rather than seeing the true value and what an agent can bring, we're in a really tough spot now. Because we don't have regulation, you can be 16 years old, failed all your GCSEs, rock up on a moped. And
our favourite expression here is if you can breathe, you can be an agent.
Well, that's it's true, right? And
perhaps not the best, but
no, it's not great. And I'm not saying you necessarily have to have in this day and age 10 A stars at GCSEs to go and achieve. You need to be learning based and have integrity and everything else. But because the barrier for entry is so low, we don't attract kind of top talent in. Whereas if you look at France, you look at the US, you look at majority of the developed nations, real estate is held to a much higher standard because of the regulation, and because you have to pay 15 grand a year to keep your license in some US states. And that means that the service level is higher, the ability to really put that client first is higher. So I think the model for sales is broken in the UK, and when you speak to clients, they say, what do you think my house is worth, and what fee are you going to charge me? And there's so much more than that. If I share with you a stat, for every 100 properties that come onto the market in London, only 38.7 sell, you go, well, that's awful. Whereas in our brokerage, we're above 70%. Now, why do I share that? The estate agency were above 70, the average in London is 38.7, because actually our guys generally don't go out to just market stuff. They go to sell it, they give proper advice, and they're very skilled in helping the client self-discover what the right thing is. And my background is Deloitte. I used to be a management consultant, and I very much see myself and any of the agents in the business as trusted advisors, rather than someone in a shiny suit from Next that's got a million KPIs, drives a mini round at 100 miles an hour, stinks of tobacco and whatever else they smoke. And the reputation is that bad. And for me, it has to change. And with the convergence of technology, the ability to learn from our American and Australian cousins, and the fact that it's all over Netflix now with Buying Beverly Hills, and we've got a Buying London coming here, I think people are seeing that being and I hated the term real estate, but I'm starting to use it, but being a real estate agent now, a realtor, right? It can be done where you don't have to listen to your manager who's just telling you to book viewings, and your KPIs are your business goals. And what we're doing now is allowing entrepreneurial people that maybe didn't have 100 grand or what have you, or the chance to step out and do two things: run their own estate agency for a couple of £100 a month and then a proportion of the revenue they generate. But two, not have to answer to a boss who maybe hasn't sold property for 25 years, or a new head of sales has come in and said, well, our new KPIs are mortgage, FS, solicitors, and I need you to be converting at 50%. All the BS that comes with it, because no one knows what to do. So I think the timing's right. We're seeing a lot of agents wanting to transition to this model. And again, I think by 2030, 50% of transactions will be done by self-employed agents.
Okay, thank you for that. That's all we've got time for in this half of the show. So join me again after the break, when we'll be asking Anthony and Chris more of your questions. Hello and welcome back to part 2 of Property Question Time. I'm Stephen Galpin, and I'm joined today by Anthony Kyriacou and Chris Buckler. Welcome back, both of you. Anthony, in some ways, city centre rents could force geographical moves for many in the workplace. Could this be one of the smaller but beneficial effects of higher rents? I have levelling up in my mind. Now, just to clarify that, we talked a little bit about this off camera. City centre rents in the main towns, Manchester, London, Birmingham, they have shot up, and it has forced people out into the sort of peripheral areas. And I'm actually not sure that that's such a bad thing, because it is spreading the population. It may also spread and encourage employers to take people on in other than sort of city centre places. A little bit like here in Canary Wharf. I mean, there are one or two of the very big firms, some solicitors, some banks, that's all saying, why are we paying for this building now? Because everybody wants to work from home. We've got 20, 30, 40, 50, 100 spare desks. We're not using them. So I think we'll move out of Canary Wharf and find somewhere more modest. But again, if that spreads the workplace, if that does level up in certain areas. So down to you, what do you think?
Yeah, I think it's a fantastic thing. I think population density is on the increase, and there are negative things which come with that. So if we can disperse population, I wouldn't say equally, but around other major cities in the UK, I think that's a fantastic thing. It opens up job opportunities, local businesses. I think in theory it is great, but the big cities still have their draws. Although rents are high, people are willing, or to some extent able, to stomach that because of the employment opportunities that those cities offer. But if people moving out to the peripheries, to the more kind of rural parts of towns and cities, I think it's a fantastic thing.
I have thought for a long time, if you go past the M25, you sort of drop off the end of the world. I don't know.
Yeah, well, a lot of people look at, I think you've got London and then the rest,
yeah.
Isn't it? So that's kind of where the charm or the attraction comes of London and these other cities, as you mentioned, Manchester, Birmingham, etc. I think in theory it would be a wonderful thing, and it would open up so many other opportunities for these kind of rural towns, which I think need them.
I think you're right, and I also think it's preferable to redeveloping city centres. I'm not sure that converting empty shops or empty warehouses is such a wonderful idea. I know the idea of sort of permitted development rights is quite good in theory, but in a lot of these places, I used to live in St Catherine's Dock at one time, down there, very beautiful, lovely dock there, right by the Tower of London. But there was no infrastructure whatsoever. If you wanted to go to the shops, you've got to get a bus or train into the West End or wherever. There's just nothing there. And I think that can be quite damaging for a community, especially if you've got a lot of older people that want the convenience of walking to a shop, and they're perhaps walking is not as good as it was 20 years ago or whatever. So I think you've got to be very careful with these redevelopment areas.
Yeah, and probably one of the more modern kind of dilemmas is, are you too far away from a delivery?
Yeah.
So how far do you move from the town centre, essentially? But it's a fantastic point.
And one of the coffee shops ethos, which is we don't want you walking more than 3 minutes before you get a coffee. But I mean, they're the sort of difficulties that planners are facing at the moment. But I just don't think it's a silver bullet. A lot of them think it is. I really don't. For me, if you want shopping centres and high streets to survive, that's fine. Reduce the rents. Get tenants in. If you have to take a reduced rent for 2 or 3 years, then take it. You're creating vibrancy. You're creating a community where people can congregate, shop, and have their lives serviced, which is what I think most of it's about, really.
And it's also a melting pot of ideas too,
Yeah.
and that's where kind of innovation comes from.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Agree with you. Okay, Chris, the business of online-only agency seems to be dying a death. I know this is a good subject for you. Has it had its day, and are we edging back to the high street agency model?
No, I don't think it has had its day. I think until agents and the reputation of agents changes in the UK, you will see the public going, if I can sell it for free or for a couple of £100 up front, that's what I'll do. So I finished a Pilates class last night, got chatting to one of the ladies. I was the only male in the class. And she said, what do you do? I explained, and she said, oh, I'm online with Purple Bricks. And I said, how are you getting on? She said, I'm not having much luck. And she showed me the listing, and we went through bits and bobs. And you could see she was thinking, this guy really knows his stuff, and I actually really believe in the advice he's giving me. But I don't know if I want to pay for it. And it was really, really interesting. So I'll speak to her over the next couple of weeks. I've no doubt she'll ask me some more advice, and then we'll probably take her on as a client. But why do I stress that? Because that's how the public think. The commisery. I don't want to pay for a high street agent that whizzes me around or doesn't really vet the client or doesn't negotiate on my behalf, etc. So I actually think we'll see an increase in people that want to do it themselves and self-serve, if you like. I think the high street agency is in a really tough spot when, again, I believe more people are going to go to this kind of online hybrid, individual, trusted advisor piece. But I don't know what the high street really offers as a huge USP or a value now, right? So the number one reason people choose an agent is trust. The number one reason people don't choose an agent is trust. But if the guy that's coming out to list your property is the guy you never speak to again, you speak to the negotiators or the office or Becky who says, I don't know what's happening, let me phone you back. I think it's a tough spot. So for me, I think the two increases are going to be your brokers and the onlines, even though they're having a bit of a tough time at the moment. I think it's the high street in the middle that's going to suffer.
How do you define a broker from an agent?
So for me, a high street would have a shop front premises, and they would employ the staff that work with them. In my model, all of my guys are self-employed, and they pay a small monthly fee to us. They run their own limited companies. They act as associates of the estate agency. But when a £10,000 fee comes in, they take 7,000 to 9,600 of that fee. Why is that important? Well, they don't need to do 30, 40 transactions a month just to, keep the wolf from the door. They can do 10 transactions a year extremely well, navigate the pitfalls with the client to ensure that the client has the best outcome. And I think the guys in the high street, the setup means they can't. So I know there are high street agents I speak to day in, day out, and they want to come to this brokerage model because they're saying, listen, I've just let Mrs. Jenkins down, but if I had an extra 2 hours to do the sales chasing or to go and sit on the buyer's sofa and have a meaningful conversation, I could have saved that sale. But because I've got to get 30 across the line each month, I know I'm going to let that one slip.
But do you think then that let's call them the high street agent, have been a little bit their own worst enemy in not really vetting who they employ, not really training them to great extent? I mean, here in London, with the price of things being very expensive, you can very easily get a £40,000 or £50,000 fee for selling your house. Okay, I mean, I had one young lady negotiator come into my apartment, stood in the middle of the kitchen, and announced that this is the kitchen. And I thought, no, you're kidding. I've always wondered what all these machines are for, and I thought, what a kind of stupid statement. She also then opened the door to the downstairs loo and said, this is the second bedroom. Oh, sorry, no, it's a WC. And I thought, if I have a sale here, it's going to cost me £40,000 or £50,000. And this is the kind of service I'm getting. Now that would lead me to the more hungry, more conscientious, I think, brokers you would term them. So to my mind, I think the high street agents are guilty of their own demise in some ways.
I do agree. I think one of the fundamentals that lacks in the UK is training. And I'm fortunate enough that I've flown around the world and met some of the best. I was in Sydney the other week with a guy called Josh Fegan, one of the best real estate business trainers. I was part of Keller Williams and got to meet Gary Keller and, learn from some of the very best people in our industry. And that excites me. I go to bed listening to negotiation podcasts and objection handles, and I'm a real geek with this stuff. But the high street agents it seems to be a lot of on-the-job training. And now there is some high street agencies with great training. Foxton's had some brilliant training and what have you. But on the whole, most agents I speak to say, I learn on the job. They're the keys, go and do it, shadow someone quickly. In terms of full training, it just doesn't seem to exist. So yeah, I think there's the training piece, but I will say it's so hard to find a great agent, so hard, that unfortunately, due to the model, sometimes you just have to get someone in, and that's where I think that the standard is so low.
Okay, that's all we've got time for in today's show. So thank you very much for watching, and a big thank you to Chris Buckler and Anthony Kyriacou. Hope you come back and see us again sometime. Your answers have been very helpful for some of our viewers. Thank you very much indeed. I'm Stephen Galpin. Join me again next time on Property Question Time.